Everyone has different unique experiences and memories with Pokemon, but every now and then there's distinct moments that, for whatever reason, a large mass of people seem to share. One of those is how we remember the Pokemon themselves. Whether you only watched the anime, played the games, collected the cards, or some mix of anything, we all have distinct memories of when we first encountered certain Pokemon, which kinda engrave the region we associate them with. Now sure, a lot of these can be attributed to lack of knowledge or just straight up being a naive kid at the time, but there's a handful of Pokemon that, to really no fault of our own, commonly get mixed up for being from the wrong region. Now, probably the most common reason a Pokemon gets associated with the wrong region usually has to do with their rarity, and the biggest culprit of this by far would have to be the Johto region. Johto already has the common stigma of being a Kanto Part 2 or a Kanto DLC, so a lot of Johto Pokemon in general kinda get mixed up with the Kanto Mons, but there's a select few that in terms of the games themselves were pretty uncommon to see. Which you'll soon find out ends up being the case with a lot of Pokemon. I think the anime honestly usually did a better job at showing off new Pokemon compared to the games, especially when it came to Johto. Now we might as well start with the one directly on the thumbnail, Skarmory. The reason people often mistake Skarmory for being a Gen 3 Pokemon purely comes down to its location and, well, rarity. You can find Skarmory in only one location in both Gen 2 and Gen 3, both of which will be a rare 5% spawn. So already not great to start, but this is where things go even more downhill for his Generation 2 games. Unlike in Gen 3, where you can find Skarmory in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, in Gen 2, Skarmory was a Silver exclusive, meaning he could only be found in Silver and Crystal, and the nail in the coffin is his location. In Gen 3, Skarmory could be found on Route 113, on a route you're actually required to pass through, as well as the route itself just being way more memorable. It was the route that connected to Fall Arbor Town and had the volcanic ash falling out the sky that piled up on the grass and was kind of fun to run through. As for Gen 2, Skarmory's only 5% spawn was on a route that, let's be honest, most players completely skipped. You see, you'll get access to Route 45, the route Skarmory spawns on, while you're in Blackthorn City, aka the 8th gym location. Now, after beating the gym, you'll get a call from Professor Elm telling you to come see him in order to receive the Master Ball. So you really have two options. Manually walk all the way down Route 45, through 46, and across Route 29, or press fly and be there instantly. As you can imagine, most people just flew, and the few who didn't, well, it was still a 5% spawn, so chances were you weren't encountering one. Oh, and the Gen 3 Flying Gym Leader uses one as well, unlike Gen 2, where no one prominent really uses a Skarmory. But hey, at least that Johto Pokemon can actually, be found in Johto, unlike these next few. Up next, Slugma, another Pokemon that commonly gets mistaken for a Gen 3 Mon. Now, Slugma is nowhere near as scarce as Skarmory is. It has 3 locations, 2 rare spawns and 1 pretty common one, and its evolution Magcargo is even on the Gym Leader Blaine's team. The catch to all this? Well, all 3 spawn locations and the Gym Leader are in Kanto, aka postgame. That's right, a Johto Pokemon that can't even be found in Johto. In Gen 3's case, Slugma was found on the Fowry Path, which you get to pretty early game, and also appeared on Gym Leader Flannery's team. Next up is one of my favorite Johto Pokemon, and that's the Houndour line. Yet another Johto Pokemon you can't actually find in Johto. Houndour can only be found on one singular route in Kanto, and only at nighttime, meaning once again, not a lot of people ever seen it or used it. Though, unlike a lot of others on this list, there isn't one specific gen it gets mistaken for, cause for whatever reason, Houndour and Houndoom have kinda always been pretty rare, obscure, or late game, so it's kind of an oddball here. Now these next 2 Johto Pokemon do technically fit with the others I've mentioned so far, but also kinda act as a good segue for this next category I'm gonna dub Evolution Confusion. Alright, the name's a work in progress, but that's besides the point. This category is for Pokemon that were not only kinda rare in the regions to begin with, but also happen to get new evolutions in future generations, and the biggest culprit of doing this is the Sinnoh region. So to finish off the list of confusingly rare Johto Pokemon, we have both Murkrow and Misdreavus. Murkrow, once again, not even being obtainable in Johto, was locked away to 2 Kanto routes exclusively at nighttime. As for Mischievous, well, she spawns in only one area, once again exclusively at night, but hey, at least it's in Johto this time. And that Johto location is Mount Silver. Yeah, the same Mount Silver that requires all 16 badges to access. God, they really aren't making it easy to use these new Johto Pokemon, are they? They could have at least given her to the Ghost Gym Leader or something. And as you probably guessed, both of these Johto Pokemon get mistaken for Gen 4 Mons all the time. And you can't blame them. I've seen them more in Gen 4 than I ever have playing Generation 2. Murkrow not only shows up way earlier in Eterna Forest, but it also gets a new evolution and is used by the villain of the game. And the same goes for Mischievous, a lot more common and gets a new evolution. Okay, so remember how I said we were done with Pokemon introduced in Johto? Yeah, well, here's a perfect real-world example of the entire topic of this video. The next Pokemon is Apom, who, funny enough, I forgot to group in with the other Johto Pokemon. All is good though, because he falls into the same Gen 4 category, being as it was available all over Sinnoh, got a new evolution, and was also always in the Diamond and Pearl anime, being as Ash had one that he later traded to Dawn. All these together leads even me to mistake it for a Gen 4 Pokemon every now and then. Another one that honestly feels more like a Gen 4 Pokemon to me is Roselia. For starters, it got both a pre-evo and a final evo, being Budew and Roserade in Generation 4, and was a pretty common Pokemon throughout Sinnoh in general, and also had its fair share of anime appearances as well. Next up is Snorunt, who shares a mix of being pretty rare on Generation 3, being as it's only found in Shoal Cave during low tide, which, yes, is a time-based event, meaning someone playing on a cart with a dead battery could technically never encounter Snorunt. That, and it getting a new evolution in Gen 4 as well, led some people to believing it was a Gen 4 Pokemon. Another Gen 3 Pokemon who suffers the same thing is Chimecho, at least if you weren't big into the Hoenn anime at the time. James and Chimecho were pretty iconic in the Hoenn region. But as for the games, Chimecho was only found at the top of Mount Pyre with a measly 2% encounter rate, meaning most people never got one. This, topped with it also getting a new evolution in Gen 4, led a lot of people to confuse it for a Generation 4 Pokemon. Now if you want to talk confusing, let's talk about some 3-stage Pokemon that were introduced in 3 different generations, that being the Electabuzz line, the Magmar line, the Chansey line, and the Porygon line. Game rarity aside, the fact that each stage of these Pokemon's evolution lines are all from a different generation of games messes people up all the time. And finally, to end off the list, we have Munchlax, who was literally everywhere but the mainline games in Generation 3, despite him being a Generation 4 Pokemon. Not only did May have one during the Hoenn anime, but it was also in Destiny Deoxys, was also in Mystery Dungeon, was also in Gale of Darkness on the GameCube, and was also, weirdly enough, in Pokemon Dash. Yeah, that's right. The anime, a movie, and not 1, not 2, but 3 different spin-off games before finally debuting in Generation 4. Pretty easy to see why someone might confuse it for a Gen 3 Pokemon. Now I will at least throw in 3 honorable mentions. First, Ho-Oh and Togepi. Now I think these 2 Pokemon are pretty iconic Gen 2 Johto Pokemon, but if for some reason you happen to be a kid who watched the Gen 1 anime and for some reason skipped Generation 2 as a whole, I could understand how Ho-Oh and Togepi's Gen 1 anime appearances could lead you to believe they were Gen 1. And finally, Lucario. Once again, I didn't include him because at least to me he seems to be a pretty iconic Gen 4 Pokemon, but he did appear early in both his own movie and the Mystery Dungeon games, so it is plausible to have mistaken him. That being said, I'm curious which Pokemon on this list you've associated with the wrong region, or maybe there's one not on this list. Either way, leave your answers down in the comments. Until next time, keep exploring, keep catching, and as always, stay legendary.